Okay guys, here we go. And we're back for number 6 of the 7 series, 7 key principles. This one's trust. It's a challenge because we let go of control in this one. So it's a great check-in point just to always like having a look at, you know, are we trying to control it or are we okay to trust it? So I start at the top here by saying trust, and why trust is such an integral part of the 7 keys is we got to understand that all 7 key principles make up one purpose, and that's to keep us in a spaciousness of sanity and knowing and peace and being, rather than a doer engaged in the world and through the 5 physical senses trusting that process, but trusting an inner journey. So the 7 keys are there to keep us in alignment with staying out of ego land and into absolute of the holy presence of the self. So first one, 12 o'clock, top dead center, is don't trust your 5 physical senses, the body's 5 senses. That's ego's trust. Ego wants to report back. Trusting the body's 5 senses, essentially, the singular number 1 purpose of that is the ego wants you to prove through the body senses that separation is real, sin's real, guilt's real, because everything that comes at you from reporting through the 5 physical senses is of separation, is of sin, is of guilt, is that we're all, you know, not unified. So the whole purpose behind ego's 5 physical senses is to prove to you that we're separate and therefore guilty of punishment. So I've got here, just to wrap it, body wants to prove to you that the world is real. So that world, remember in the other videos I spoke about, we live in 2 worlds but only one's real. That's the one that it wants to prove. So through the 5 physical senses, essentially all of that, what it means is body, ego wants to prove it real and not the absolute. You're the Holy Son of God and that's the will of God and that's what's real. So a great exercise, and in the course I mentioned in the video yesterday around radical self-honesty, when we go to working through the principles in the FIP version, in the section Manual for Teachers, section 4, page 9, page 10, it goes through the 6 stages of the development of trust. So I think this would be a great, and I've just put the reference points here, it's a great go-to place, and I'll tell you why I say that. Is that it sets out the 6 stages on page 10 in the development of trust for the teachers of God going through, and it's the very first one that he talks about out of the 10 points of being a teacher of God. The first of the 6 stages is the period of undoing. The second one is the sorting out period. The third one, I've made a typo there, sorry. Should be period of sorting out. The third one is the period of relinquishment. The fourth one's the period of settling down. Excuse me. The fifth one is a period of unsettling. And then the final one is the period of achievement. Go through those 6 paragraphs in detail and just feel into, again, you know, on the barometer, do a self-check with where you think you might be with what relates to a feeling state internally of that gauge of being radically honest and vulnerable and truthful, and from a experience perspective where you think you might be sitting in the 6 stages of the development of trust. And there's no judgment whether you're here or there. In fact, you could have quite a little bit of most. The thing that I found very enlightening is that I could relate to the period of undoing. You know, that's where we start our whole process, because it's about removing all the blocks to the presence of love. And until we remove them, we have no trust. So we have to go through that undoing period. And I call this collectively, and this is Daniel's term, I call this collectively, apart from the last one, I call that the deconstruction period. So as we deconstruct all of the ego's mechanisms that are deeply entwined in our psyche and our consciousness and our actions and our past life to this moment experiences, all of that needs to be deconstructed. And it'd be great also too for you to do a check-in with, you know, what does deconstruction mean for you? For me, it's a vitally, I get super excited to think about all the things that I've done in terms of that deconstructing process, and the points of the deconstructing, because I know I'm getting closer and closer and closer to the last one. And the final stage of the development of trust is the period of achievement. It's where everything comes together and we get to move out of the human realm, limited by fear, into the all-expansive knowing. And we step from the illusion into the real world. So I want to grab the first 5 stages to the development of trust and run at the gate, run at the wall, have a breakdown in order to have a breakthrough. And I'm totally cool with that. Again, with willingness and accountability and all that. You've heard me say it before. Am I willing? Yes, 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 yes. So that's the reasons why I'm so and I'm watching the word because I don't want to sound egoic about it. My devotion and my willingness is at 100% because of that. I don't want to tread water and fiddle around any longer than needed on this whole thing. So to me, you know, Nook and I have vowed that we've come together in this holy relationship for that reason, is to complete the victory lap and go all the way and not have, you know, ego tempt us to do a bypass or go off and, you know, do some spiritual smorgasbord somewhere else. It's now and it's here. So, you know, we're very dedicated to this. So anyway, so just put some context around that. Manual for Teachers, section 4, page 9, but on page 10 it sets out the whole thing, but I encourage you to start at page 9 and read that whole section and really feel into that, because it shows you what you need to do in order to build, obtain, get, relinquish, let go of, and lean back into trust, rather than this here, which is the ego doing the trusting. So let's have a look. So don't trust your 5 physical senses. That's the ego. Don't have any. This is a good point, because the moment we have an emotional attachment to an outcome, we've essentially handed over all our trust to ego, and we're hanging on white knuckle grip on the steering wheel, and we have an investment in the outcome of the process. So the question comes up in 2 realms. Do you trust the process or do you control the process? The moment we have an the moment we have an emotional attachment or an investment in a particular outcome, we're not trusting the process. We're manipulating and controlling the process. So I've just put that in there because I think it's worthwhile as a reminder when we go through, you know, and you guys will refer back to these videos when you have a trust issue. You'll go back and go, well, maybe I missed something that Daniel was talking about. So I've left that in there because I think it's really important. Does the process need to look a certain way? Do you have an emotional investment in the process? All of that is control mechanism. All of that is hanging on to the steering wheel, white knuckle grip, and you don't trust the process. You want to control and manipulate the outcome. So it's ego doing the trusting. So I've left these in here just for you to mirror back and do a check-in as a reminder of who's the one doing the trusting. So again, trust that ego control mechanism, and that's, you know, again, some reminders. Stop controlling. Do you trust the process? You know, and I've just gone over that. Or controlling the process, and just let me drop this one in your lap too, because I think it too is a great reminder. If there's a part of you that wants to convince or justify or substantiate the trusting process, then it's not trust. If you want to convince, justify or substantiate anything, there's no trust in there. That's just pure ego land, and you're trying to manipulate and control. What's the flip side of that? The flip side is being still, drop right down into a place of resting, silence, knowledge, knowing, letting go, stillness, listening, feelings, spaciousness, allowing, transcending self-interest, transcending the ego, transcending any temptation of engagement or of doing. That's trust. That is trust. So that's just, you know, a few tools for you to look at. So up here, I just want to go into another place, because that's another great check-in for when you're engaged in this whole process of integrating these 7 key principles into authentic relating and communication. With your trust, do you have gratitude for not controlling the process? There's a clincher. Is there a gratitude for you to let go and not control? If you have gratitude, and you can genuinely feel that from an emotional transparency, vulnerability, defenseless state of being, then you're in that sweet spot where you're okay to not control, and you are letting go, and it is of trust, holy trust, not ego trust. You're okay to be vulnerable and honest and say how you feel while you're working through this process and you're not quite there. So, you know, I'll put it here. Are you okay to be vulnerable, honest, and say how you feel while sharing and letting go of control or manipulating an outcome? So in other words, if you're going through this process and it's very new to you, and you know, predominantly in the past you've been a bit of a control freak, just be honest. Just say, hey, listen, I'm having a hard time letting go, but I just want to be open about that. I want to be honest about that. Help me to just hold space for me while I work through this process. And if any feelings of, you know, sadness or you know, emotion starts moving through your body around controlling and letting go of control, it's fine. Just let it go. Just let it come up. Just be in the moment. Allow those, trust your brother, trust your sister, trust your buddy, whoever you're with, that they'll hold space for you while you process that. You know, take the lid off it. Just allow it to come up and allow it to be free. And I think it's a very important thing, because the only way you'll heal control is to move through it. And effectively over the past, we've always put a lid on that emotional plug from where we abandoned ourselves and we had deep regret. So let that regress and let the emotion just let it come up. It's beautiful. As you move through it, you'll feel a sense of liberation and lightness, and it'll take the weight off your shoulders. Trust comes from knowing, Trust comes from knowing, not from convincing. And knowing is stillness. Convincing is doing. So constantly bombarding the conversation and trying to climb over people is convincing and preaching and teaching and all that stuff. That's not trust. Trust is letting go and just be in that place of knowing and that silence. Remember, we wrote it all out here. Here's another really good one, because ego hates it. Do we ask for help? Do we ask for help to develop our trust? Do we ask for help? Do we externally vocalize and help and invite people in to help us hold us while we develop our trust? No, no. Exactly the opposite. We're so bloody busy filling every void and every space with a word to convince somebody about how much we seem to trust or know, or it's ridiculous. And it's so obvious when you get this, when you really get to see it playing out in the dynamic of conversations and communications. It's ridiculous. My question is, ask for help, because that just negates and cuts down and nukes the ego right there. So if you want to do some experiments around, how much ego is playing out in your communication methodology, just stop for a minute and say, look, I don't know anything about this. I feel way out of my depth, way out into deep water. Can you help me? I'm asking you for help. And just watch the what's the reaction that's going on in the body. It'll be like, you'll feel it. Ego hates asking for help. Ego loathes asking for help. Ego hates saying I'm sorry. Ego hates saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I was wrong. Ego hates asking for help. Ego hates you being verbally vulnerable and seeking assistance and having that level of transparency where you say, I don't know how to do it. Would you help me go through this process? Ego loathes it, it hates it, it'll defend it with every bit of its arsenal. Just feel into that as you're expressing and moving through this, because when you come out the other side, that's what's going to build trust. Is when you go through that and you let it come up and you feel it and you express it and you share it with another. That's where the miracle can come in and heal the moment. It's a beautiful transition to be consciously, lucidly present while all of that's going on. And the last one I've got down here is, who's the one seeking to learn trust? Who is the one? So back to the whole thing, we live in two worlds, only one's real. If you're coming from, and I think it's a really important one to put here, because who's the one doing the doing? Take it back to the origin of thought. Needs to be once removed, twice removed, 3 times removed, 4 times removed. You need to come back out of all those layers that have been intrinsically built and carefully manipulated by ego over many experiences and lifetimes and years of communication, to remove you from what true communication is, true trust, true, 7 keys. True willingness, true accountability, true defenselessness, and so forth. Who's the one seeking to do it? Take some accountability for where your mind's coming from. So unpack yourself out of the scenario, set yourself up an intention to go, well, I want to be selfless. I don't want an agenda. I don't need to control it. I don't want to be separate from my brother or from a conversation. I want to speak from the heart, not from the head. I don't want to manipulate. I don't want to control. I want to close the gap. I don't want to prove I'm right. I don't want to teach or preach. I want to receive and be still and be quiet. I want to sit in the stillness of that expanse and allow and just be. So in conversations, guys, leave some space between your words. Allow some presence to come in. And as we said in the video yesterday around radical honesty, you can't have any conflict in what you say, what you think and what you say, what you feel and what you do. You can't have any conflict. Everybody will pick it up. So when you go into the space of trust, who's the one trying to trust? That's a self-check-in thing that I ask you to go to. In that reversal process, origin of thought, go back, go back, go back. Get out of the picture. Go back. It's like, no, you're not in the body. You're not the one standing beside the body looking at the body. You're not the one behind that one of the one looking at the body. You're not in the room where the one that's looking at the one looking at the body. You're not in the house of the room of the one looking at the one that's looking at the body. Just keep removing yourself back. Move back out of the road and let go of all the emotional attachments to the 5 physical senses. Go to a place of just being of curiosity and silence and space and stillness, and seek to hear and feel guidance coming in from something that's not of this world, not of the human realm. Sit in that place in stillness. It's like being in deep meditation in a forest, listening to the little crickets or the songbirds or the wind in the treetops or a leaf falling down through the canopy of a tree, or on a beach on a dead calm day where you just hear the little tiny wash of the waves coming in over the little pebbles and the seashells. Be in that place of stillness. That's where trust will come from. Trust will come from that place of not being a doer, not being all up in the head of the monkey mind with its constant chatter. Can't find trust in there. There's no peace in there. Real trust. Go back through these 6 stages and just have a look. You know, why do you think Jesus says undoing? The first one is undoing, or undoing all the blocks to the presence of love. The sorting out. In other words, sorting out all your idols. The relinquishment, letting go, letting go, letting go, letting go, let more go, more. Just keep relinquishing the hold, the control. Settling down, just exhale, breathe, just feel into that spaciousness. It's a beautiful settling down period. It's lovely. I remember it was like, oh. And the unsettling is where you get to see all the contrast of the 2 worlds. It is an unsettling period. The contrast of what's real and what's not real. You need to see the starkness, the variability, the distance between what is and what isn't. It is unsettling, but you need to see it. We all need to go through it. All of that is what will take you to the highest level, back home to the holy self. And these 6 stages, ultimately, what's it for? It's the 6 stages in the development of trust, of waking up from the dream of separation of all time. Not waking up in the dream, waking up from the dream completely. So true trust is not the body and the senses and making the world a better place. I trust everything and I'm controlling and manipulating everything and I'm convincing everybody that I got this. It's to work through all of those 6 stages in the process in here, in that silence, and not manipulate, not control. Ask for help. Be open to sharing. Have gratitude. And you'll see that whole transition, and you'll begin the morphing process from the illusion across into the reality of what's real. So, guys, trust, it's a beautiful topic. I love this. And, you know, we're getting towards the end of the 7 keys to authentic relating, and I can feel the last one, gratitude. It's a cracker. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you next. So thanks for being with me. Time's up. I want to wrap it, and I'll see you on the last one, which is gratitude. Cheers. Thank you.